All right, hey folks, how you doing? My name is Andrew Bishop. I'm down here at the Light Organ and 604 studio. And today we're going to talk a little bit about guitars, guitar pedals, tones, amps. We're also going to talk a little bit about a record I got coming out under the name WAASH. That's kind of about all we're going to do. This is our first episode, so, bear with me. I'm getting my flow. And we're just going to kind of start here because maybe you folks want to hear a little bit about how nerdy I am and how you can be a nerd like me. Just to kind of lay it out to everybody, amplifier I'm using, I got a 1968 Deluxe Reverb. This is not a reissue. This is a lovely all-original amplifier from Fullerton, 1968. It is a silver face, drip edge, so it does not have any of the CBS mods. This is actually a blackface circuit, so scored this one for dirt cheap. The guy didn't realize what he had, but this is essentially a blackface Deluxe Reverb. So kind of, you may or may not know, kind of a special amp. But we're starting right there. I got it set pretty low. So I'm someone who traditionally likes a little bit of crunch from the amp, but I like to start fairly clean, and then I'll add some more transparent drives after that. So moving into that, we go into the pedal board, which I'm going to discuss a little bit more. The first guitar I'm going to play here is a Fender Custom Shop Stratocaster. It's just a nice guitar. It's clean. It does the Strat thing. So that's kind of where we're at for the moment. So before we get too deep into anything, I'm going to show you my clean tone, because that's how they do it on these videos. And we're going to show you clean, and then we're going to kind of get into some layering, to some mods, that kind of stuff. So I'm going to turn off the modulation there, and I'm going to start on my clean. So, I'll just give you a quick show of my tone, and then I'm going to go through the pedal order and kind of how I'm using the switcher, and that's kind of about it for now. So we're going to just kind of start. So here's the clean tone, just kind of nice and chimey. Sounds like a Stratocaster. I'm going to do a quick little tune before I get any deeper, but there you go. You got a clean tone, you know what's up. So when it comes to my pedal order here, I have a few always on tasties from some fantastic pedal builders. So really the first thing going into is this Ernie Ball pedal. It's the tuner and the volume pedal. So handy, you get two things in one. It makes life easy. It's also got a beautiful display. So you can see here as I go down, it's going to show you kind of what percentage I'm at. So 10 back to 0. When it's heel down, you get your tuner. So easy to see from anywhere on stage. You can see it in the sun. You can see it in the dark. It makes life easy. Also allowed me to squeeze an extra pedal in because I didn't have to have a volume pedal. Also runs at 18 volts. So there's lots of headroom. Nice and sparkly. I originally ran it at 9, not thinking it would make a difference. Folks, it does make a difference. Going to 18 volts opens everything up, more dimension, it sounds beautiful. So now that I'm tuned, oh, that sounds a little bit better. We are going to keep going through the chain. So what I do is I'm going this, and immediately I'm going into the Origin Effects Cali 76 compressor. I really like this compressor because it is a take on the 1176 compression circuit, and it has two. So two compressors in one pedal. You can run just one if you want, or you can run them both. So what I end up doing is I've got my first compressor over here. So you can see if I turn this all the way down, this gold one sweeps it through to the second compressor, and you're going to see here, it's not really lighting up. It's really just getting that first one there because I'm not really hitting that second compressor yet. So essentially, just to give myself a lot of feedback, but some nice attack, also a nice even kind of tone. Nice and volume kind of level. I've got this one set with it's just kind of grabbing nice and quickly, and then it's releasing also fairly quickly. So all I'm doing with that first compressor is just trying to even my tone out, but not really add too much sustain. Now this is the real golden little nugget on this pedal. This middle button here controls how far you go to the second compressor. So I like to hit that second compressor pretty hard. As you can see here by the dials, I'm almost, kind of other side of the spectrum on my second compression. So again, I'm grabbing that a little bit later, but I'm adding a lot of sustain to it. So you'll see here, I'll turn it back down again. Here's a note. With just that first one, but you notice that that light turned off pretty quickly because I'm not holding on to it very long. Now when I bring this through, I'll go about halfway to my spot there. You're gonna see it's gonna hit that second light. And immediately you can hear that sustain. We're getting there. I like to hit it a little harder. So I bring it over here. This is kind of where I like it. And you're gonna see now that second light really goes. And I'm almost getting feedback with a clean tone and nothing else on. And I think that's pretty special. So that's like ultimate nerddom right there. Next in the chain. I think from here on, I'm going to a little secret pedal, which you're unable to see, but underneath, just in case I'm at a venue with some noisy power or I'm in the studio and I need to be something nice and clean, I've got a noise gate hidden underneath the board. So I can flip it over, find the kind of sweet spot and cut out any of the background noise. Power's clean here, so I don't really have it on. But if we're talking about this board, that's where we go. So that kind of is just, has everything running through it. Again, just if I need to clean things up, there we go. And then in terms of the kind of always on stuff at the beginning of the chain, that's kind of about it. So it's this wonderful preamp here from JHS. Love JHS, love your pedals, love your show. You should give me some pedals. Secondly, then I'm going to that Cali 76 from Origin Effects. Now we're going into switcher temp. So to make myself, to make my life easier, really, I kind of have this switcher set up with just some presets. So, I've got one loop here on the ES5, so you got 5 loops. I got one loop kind of with that noise gate in it, if it ever needs to be used. I also have a loop with all of my fuzz. I've got a loop with all of my overdrive. I've got a loop with delay. And then I've got a loop with the first set of my modulation, which is the diamond vibrato up here. So I liked having the fuzz and the overdrive on separate loops because I can switch order if need be. There's so many rules to how you set up your pedal board. So people always tell you to do one thing and you should try those rules out, but don't be scared to try other things. One of those rules is quite often people put fuzz before their overdrives, which is totally makes sense. And I did that for the longest time. And I have some of these fuzzes before, but I also have some of them after. And it just kind of made sense to do it that way for me. And I'll explain a little bit more why as we get kind of further into the description, but that's kind of like where I feel like you have a little bit of room to play. And for me, it was when I was sending the fuzzes, if they were really high gain, into a light gain overdrive pedal, for the most part, that level knob on that overdrive pedal is just acting as a master. And because I have a pretty clean guitar tone to start coming out of that amp, when I do have some drive on, it's usually at unity. So what was happening is, other than an EQ shift within the fuzz pedal, I was having a hard time getting it to bump up if I was going to a lead or something like that. It was hitting that second overdrive right after, and it was just kind of capping off at that. So it was altering the sound of the drive rather than just putting a fuzz on after. So I made a bit of a switch around, and it was nice having the effects looper in having the fuzz and overdrive in different orders. That way I could mess around and I could move them on either side from one another and try different combinations, and that turned out to be really well. So while we're talking about dirt, because I do have the dirt and fuzz coming before delays and modulation, we're gonna go into my dirt loop. So again, I have this kind of set up as presets. For me, the reason I wanted this was I was kind of tired of having to pedal hop like crazy, and those moments when you're maybe leaving a verse and going into a chorus and you need to add a delay and overdrive at the same time, or adding a reverb or something like that. It was just too much dancing, and I love to dance, but sometimes I just want to play. So that is the way I was able to do that without having to hop between two pedals or try and sit on my heels and hit two pedals at once. while maybe trying to start singing a line on a chorus. It's just too much. So I kind of went to this world. So what I would do is kind of go into my dirt circuit here, and typically the trick is I just have to make sure I have my pedals already on before the song starts, settings where I want them, and then I can kind of just switch over when I need it. So when we're talking about my drive chain, we're gonna start here, we're gonna talk about this one, just to start here. This is a really great pedal builder, Petty John. They're American built, fantastic pedal company. I have 2 pedals from them. This is the pedal called the Edge. You know, it has kind of its name coming from that edge of breakup sound. So it's a very light gain overdrive. And the cool thing about Petty John is at the time, and they still are doing pedals, but they're more doing like smaller runs, like boutique runs. At the time, they had kind of a few different lines, and you were able to get a standard one, which were all fantastic, but if you wanted to, you could add on and maybe change the color of the LED, which is then going to change the tone. You could add different capacitors. You could upgrade. You could do some little tweaks. So that was a really great thing with Petty John. So I went with the orange LED. It was just like a nice warm sounding circuit, and this actually changed the way that I saw overdrive circuits. And I've always seen the naming LED in certain fuzzes and overdrives, but that's to my own foolishness. I did not realize it actually had a light, an LED, and that sound is going through it, and that's what's causing the clipping. The cool thing with this Petty John one, with the Edge here, is that they externalized that LED. So this is just my on-off indicator here, and this little one in the middle is actually going to show you how hard it's clipping. And that is pretty handy. So you'll see here, I've got it set fairly lightly, but you'll see that come on. Just a nice little crunch. And as I bring that drive back, you can see it's not really hitting that. Even if I bring the volume up to get it to where it was, still not really hitting that circuit. And as you go, I can see. So it's nice to have a visual representation for that tone, because then I know if it's the pedal or if it's the amp or if it's a little bit of both. But it's a handy pedal. Also really like this lows here on the EQ is before the drive circuit. So it actually really affects how the overdrive works, because more low end's gonna hit that circuit a little bit different and give you more tone. So it really allows you to nerd out, and it's nice to have a visual representation. So whenever I'm doing kind of like a dirtier tone, something like that, I kind of just start off with this. And that's kind of my platform. So again, if I wanted to do, as I go to my clean, so not much of a volume jump, and that's intentional. It's more just like kind of a baseline tone, and then I can add stuff on top. Just a nice little crunch. This pedal also has the option to run at anywhere between 7 and, is it 18 volts? So you can choose how hard you want to hit it, and it really does make a difference. More headroom, the higher the voltage. Pretty straightforward. While we're talking about Petty John, we might as well also then talk about the Chime over here, which is another fantastic pedal. To be honest, I can't remember which upgrades I did with this one, but I added a few extra things. It's got an LED and a germanium clipping option, which is really nice. So all the way over to one side is LED, all the way over is germanium, and you kind of, if you want, you can blend and find your little sweet spot. Now, one really cool thing about this pedal, one of the many cool things about this pedal, is it has a ability inside to, it's got like a power pump essentially. So take a 9 volt, but I believe it goes to 34 or 36 volts internally. So from my understanding, that's like kind of what rack gear is running at. It's like theoretically one of the higher levels that you could have your voltage, and electricity is happy at these currents. So it just sounds bigger, it sounds more dimensional, and it was not something that I ever really noticed I was lacking dimension in my tone. But when I got this, and I was actually here at the studio in a recording session when we got this, so we were halfway through the session using other drives, put this in, and the tone just blossomed, and it did something really, really cool. So, you know, I'll kind of, before I show it stacked, I'm just gonna give you a little kind of love on this one here, and you can kind of see. Also has a tilt EQ, which is really, really nice. So for those of you who don't know what a tilt EQ is, instead of having independent controls for low end or for the high end, it has just one knob. So as you go to the left, adding bass, and we're removing treble, and then as we go to the other side, it's the opposite. So removing low end and adding more high. So you'll quite often don't see this in pedals. JHS has it in one of their compressors, which I have on another board. It's a fantastic just thing to have. Saves up room, nice and easy. But let's give you a little example here on this little chime. So you'll hear my tone before. A little bit of a volume jump, so I'll bring that down. I'm usually using this as a boost, but it's just trying to show you the dimension that this has, and it's just nice. It's a nice crunch. It sounds great. And again, I love that it's running internally at 36. So usually when I'm using this one, I'm using it as like a lead boost. So if I'm already in my kind of dirt setting over here and I'm playing some rhythm stuff and I want to hop in for a lead, gorgeous sustain, but it's not too cranky. It just is happy. It plays really well with other pedals. It just sounds great. These two are just good friends. So that kind of is next in the old chain here. Then we're going to some more layering. So another fantastic pedal is this Cali Katana Clean Boost. This is the mini. So this one, also Cali has been doing a power charge or power pump for quite a while. So this is the mini version of the Katana. They do have a full-size version. I believe that one does jump power internally. This one doesn't. I know some people that have the larger version. It sounds fantastic. I didn't have room on the board, so I went for the smaller one. But this is just a really nice clean boost. And again, with the combination of the Pettyjohn Edge before and then a little bit later down this Katana into the Deluxe, it's just a fantastic drive. So I usually have it set just around here, and you'll that like almost feedback kind of thing, you know? I've got the amp a little lower than I normally did, but this is a great pedal for just beautiful musical feedback. I can let a note ring out and it just sings. So this has been on the board for years and it's fantastic. I love it. There it is. And these kind of moments where I can maybe finish a lead and I can just let this ring out, and if it's appropriate for the song, I can just kind of hang out on this for the next section until my next part comes in. You're hearing it starting to build back up. So it wants to take off, but it's not. So again, very lovely pedal to play with. While we're still talking about boosts, I recently picked up this Benson Germanium Boost. I kind of have this towards the end of my drive chain, and the thought on that one was, it's kind of when I got a good tone going and I'm happy, but I just want to get things up a little bit louder than where I'm at, whether it's a lead or something like this. I just wanted an additional boost right at the very end before leaving this whole drive circuit. So the cool thing with the Benson Germanium Boost, as some of you may know, Germanium has a tendency to change tones throughout temperature. So whether it's a little bit hotter or a little bit cooler on stage, you're going to get different sounds out of a Germanium pedal. Some people love it, some people don't. That's kind of part of the charm. The cool thing with this Benson one, it regulates the bias. I think it self-biases. So when you turn it on, it takes a minute until, not really a minute, a few seconds until it gets going. And then it always makes sure it's at the right bias. So it doesn't matter how cold or hot, it just sounds good. And this one does just a really nice little, get a little buzz when I'm pressing. But it just has a nice sound. So again, I've kind of got that Petty John edge on. Again, just transparent, it's nice, it feels good, it sings, it's a beautiful, beautiful boost. And the cool thing is you can actually, when you go down here, it can take you right down to 0, which is kind of nice. So it gives you a lot of options. So if you wanted, you could, if you just liked the tone, but you didn't need a bump in your volume, you could set it down a little bit, and maybe in that next section, you just drop your volume because you're not doing a lead, but you just like the way it sounds. And I think that is a pretty cool function on this. We're almost through drive section, and then I think that'll probably conclude this episode, and then we're gonna go on to delays a little bit later on and some more modulation, but I will continue in the drive. As we're talking about Germanium, might as well talk about the Death by Audio Germanium Filter. Fantastic pedal, love Death by Audio. Big fan of A Place to Bury Strangers. They just make really cool stuff. So this one, in the best way, will change tone based on temperature, but that's not a problem for me because I love it. The filter is incredibly strong on it. You can have a very clean tone. I end up keeping the filter all the way to the left, and then I bring up that a fair amount on the kind of clipping side of it. This kind of filter will definitely change how the instrument sounds, but it's just great. One also thing, it doesn't have a volume externally. Internally, there is a just a little whatever you call it. You got to get a screwdriver in and like kind of slightly adjust the volume. But I try to get it just outside of unity. So again, I'm going to bring this down all the way to a bit lower, and you'll see when I turn it on, again, clean tone. So it's a bit of almost like unity or maybe a slight volume drop when I'm down that lower, but when I kind of get it up, and there we go, we got the meat. So, you know, if I'm kind of, there you can hear how powerful that filter is. So again, if I'm going to bring down that drive and really show that filter, it's really nice and actually very synth-like. So again, if you're doing some looping and you're playing around, this thing is really fun to have around. Again, I'm just kind of using it for some drives, so I typically set it a bit lower. I like that filter all the way down for a drive setting, and that is kind of where I keep that one. Last two pedals I'm going to talk about in this little section here are another Keeley pedal. So thanks again to Robert Keeley for all the fantastic stuff you make. This is the Keeley Darkside. So he came out with some pedals over the last little bit that all kind of pay tribute to well-known musicians. The Keeley Darkside, Darkside in the Moon, obviously Pink Floyd. This is kind of David Gilmour's tone in a box. I use the fuzz mostly, but I do use some of the modulation side. The fuzz is fantastic. It's kind of like a ram's head muff. So it's just nice and smooth. It's well scooped. It just plays really well. He's got your fuzz option here. It's got a little toggle switch. You could do a flat EQ. I keep it on scoop. There's also a full, level. I find noon is usually around unity, and filters your tone. So it's just a nice muff. It's, you know. And again, I just kind of like it at the feedback, that point of kind of self-oscillation, but it doesn't really take off. Fantastic pedal. On the other side, you do have some options. I sometimes use the modulation on here. It does have a really nice, like, I think it's probably like a take on an Echo Rec, but it has some delay if you put that toggle in the middle. All of these little dots on the side indicate different delay rhythms. My only issue with that one, and I think you can externalize it, but it doesn't have a tap tempo. So for me, I like my delays to be pretty synced. So that doesn't really cut it for me, but I think you can adjust it, but I have enough delay pedals that we'll get into later. That wasn't something for me. Over on this side, you've got a flange or a rotary speaker. Over on this side here, it's a phaser and a univibe. And it's really cool because it allows you to blend the modulation. So, you know, if I want to go, let's say here, I've got it to the right, which would be the rotary. So it's getting me into that Leslie kind of world. Very, very musical, a nice kind of detuning, but it's gorgeous. If I go over to this side, we got a flange. Drop that rate down so you can hear the flange a little bit more. Now, if you really want to, the cool thing is you can actually blend the two sounds. So for each way on the toggle switch, you have the ability to put in two different tones. So right now, in the middle, I've got half of the flange, the other half of the rotary. And again, back into that rotary Leslie kind of vibe. I do find that the mod circuit on that side has a bit of heat to it. So you can definitely hear, even at about unity, I don't know if it's the low end or what, it does hit the amp a little harder. So I do take that in consideration when I'm doing volume on that. I don't necessarily want it to change my tone too much, but that's kind of the dark side. If you do go all the way to the right, same kind of thing. You've got a univibe over on the left, and then you got a phaser on the right. In the middle will get you both fantastic sounding modulation. And again, if you're trying to save some room, great to have modulation and drive in one. And then kind of the last pedal as we're talking about the dirt loop would be the Eons here from Walrus Audio. Another fantastic company. They're doing a lot of great things. Just a cool pedal. I'm typically lately really digging drives and fuzzes that have a blend option or compressors or anything really. I want to bring that dry signal back in. And this one didn't have the option for that, and I thought that was going to be a problem for me, but instead they put this really awesome voltage control. So if you want, it just takes 9 volt, but when you're at noon, you're at 9. When you go all the way to the left, what does it get you down to? 3 volts. So nice and splatty, nice and starved. And if you want it to sound big, open, huge, you can get it over to 18 by going all the way over here. So for this kind of presetting that I've been using it for, I've had it nice and low. So kind of what I'm doing is, you'll notice, abnormal for a fuzz, my tone just cleaned up there because it has such low voltage, it's not even sending a signal. It's got it set enough that when I hit it, it's gonna crunch through, and then the minute I'm done, it's gonna kind of splatter out a little bit. So I'm using it in a bit of like a gnarly context. It doesn't have to be as gnarly. This pedal has 5 different fuzz circuits. You can switch through them. You can't stack them, but you don't really need to. It also has bass, treble, it's got your gain and your kind of master volume. But you'll see here, really quickly, as it's silent, as soon as I'm done, or if I let it splatter, you hear it dies, because it's like kind of like having a dead battery, right? So there's some players that are famous for knowing exactly how dead they like the batteries in their pedals because they got a specific tone based on that dead battery. This allows you to kind of have that thought process without having to worry about keeping batteries, and I guess at that point you would have to worry about keeping them at a certain voltage. So this kind of does it, and I kind of just nice and raunchy. And that's kind of how I got that. And that's typically what I've been using this one for. So bring up that volume a little bit. But what I like, because that voltage is so low, it's almost like having a gate after, because it just silences it right away. And if I had the voltage up, so that's at 9 volts. Still pretty quiet in between, but when I get it up to, there we go, starting to get close to 18, you're getting a little bit of noise, and it's not gonna play as nice after I quickly stop. Still pretty well behaved, but it's getting all those little extras. Obviously, single coils pointing at the board is making a little noise, but you can really hear when you crank it up. Which is a lovely thing. But you may not always want that noise or have another pedal that does that. So for me, I'll play kind of that same little lick here with the voltage down to 3. And you can hear it dying because that circuit doesn't have enough juice, but it's supposed to, and I think it sounds great. And that will get you through the drive section. So at this point, before we go into how these tones relate to some of the songs coming up on my next record, we're going to take a break. We are going to shoot the next episode because we're going to talk more about gear, and I know attention spans are a little short. So we don't want to drag this on too long. And then after this, we're going to go talk about delays. And then moving forward, we're going to talk about some modulation, reverb, and why I've chosen to put those in the order that I did. So again, thank you. My name is Andrew Bishop, and keep checking out the channel.